So it's part 2 of our first lesson. We've created a really basic file. So we're going to look a little bit at the typing in PHP. So I'm going to create, actually, before I create the new file, Alex, you had asked about how do you get the HTML template in your PHP file. Okay, so I'll show you if you're using Phpstorm how to do this. If you click on File, and just bear with me, I have to find it for a second. I believe it's under Settings. I haven't done this for a while, so I have to remember there is a way to do it. You know what, I won't take up class time. I'll figure it out and we'll go over it at the start of class next week. Alex, I'll leave it up to you to remind me. Okay. So I'm going to make a new PHP file. So I'll right click on HD Docs. We'll make a new PHP file. I'll call this vars. So we're going to play around with variables and we can see how typing works. If you don't have the HTML template, it doesn't really matter. We can write a file without it with just PHP. That's okay. So we'll create a few variables here. I'll create an X variable and we'll assign it a numeric value. And we mentioned last hour, the $sign is a required prefix for any variable or array in PHP. You got no choice. You have to use it. So notice here, I didn't actually mean to do it, but it's good that I did. On line 13, my Y has a kind of yellow background because without that $sign, the PHP interpreter assumes that's a constant. Doesn't know what Y is. And the reason is because I forgot my $sign. Even as I'm telling you how important they are, I'm forgetting them. So we've never said that these are numbers, but we're going to try and perform a mathematical operation with them anyway. And then we want to output the result. It would make sense if we could use a print command. Unfortunately, that's not the command PHP uses to render HTML. Does anybody know what command we would use if we want to display something as HTML? Yeah, we're going to use the echo command. So create and populate two variables, try and perform a math operation, and let's display the result. So we can try this. So in my browser, I'm going to load my local host. But I want to load my vars.php. So it's not that PHP has no data types, it's that they're loose. It's smart enough to recognize, hey, this variable is a number and the other variable is also a number, so therefore we can perform math. try a couple of other variables. I'll create two string variables this time. I've used double quotes around the values. In PHP, we can delimit strings with either single quotes or double quotes. Generally, it's actually better to use single quotes. I'll show you why. We'll look at the difference in how these work in a bit. So we'll try the same thing. What if we want to append these together as strings? Obviously, we can't perform addition on strings. So what result would you expect to see when we reload the page? Okay, so let's try that out. Again, this is why using the local server is faster. We can just do a refresh. If we want to run this on AWS, we'd have to save our change and we have to re-upload our files before we could refresh it. So that takes time. So our first calculation works, but yet our second one doesn't actually append these together. It actually throws an error. And our loose typing tries to infer, why do you suppose it says non-numeric? We have two non-numeric values here on line 20, and our compiler dies. Why? Right, because in PHP, as strange as this sounds, plus is a mathematical operator only. It's not actually used for performing concatenation of strings. It is in most other languages, not in PHP. So we're going to have to replace this. And in fact, my code editor is even kind of warning us about this. It highlights this in yellow. And it says we've used the wrong concatenation operator. And one of the other nice things about the JetBrains IDE is it actually makes a suggestion how to fix the problem. Down here in this little pop-up window, if I mouse over this section, it says we should replace the plus sign with a dot. So I can actually click this and it will repair my code. So if I change the plus to a dot, my code editor says this should work. I'll save that change. And I'll refresh. And now it concatenates the strings. PHP has a few syntax characteristics that are extremely non-intuitive. This is one of them. The idea of using a dot to join things is the exact opposite of what we always think a dot is for. We think of a dot as separating things, not in PHP. So you cannot use the plus sign to append strings together. I know you're used to doing this in Java. You'll be able to do it in your C# course. You can't in PHP. One of the annoying features of PHP's syntax. We'll have to get used to it. I also want to show you or explore a little bit the difference between how PHP treats single quotes and double quotes. Let's say we want to print some HTML on the screen like we want a heading tag, but then we want to represent our PHP variable inside of that. There's a few ways we could do this. Here's one way. I'm going to put on an H1. So I'm outside of my PHP tag, right? My PHP tag got closed on line 24. I'm now just writing static HTML. But now I want to inject this PHP variable inside of this HTML text. So I need to open up a new set of PHP tags. And in here, I can print out my string variable. So the code's kind of messy. Right? We've got a little bit of HTML, and then we have a block of PHP injected in the middle of it, in between the opening and closing tag. So here's how this is going to render at runtime in the browser. So this isn't the easiest code in the world to read. We've got some HTML, and then we've got the PHP injected in the middle of it. So this is one way we could do it. We have a couple of other options. We could also do this. Inside our PHP block, we could write it this way. Whoops. I guess it would have to be like this. So we could actually include the HTML tag. We can do it either way. We can embed PHP inside of our HTML, or we could simply, in our echo, include the HTML markup that we want around our variable. In this case, we should get two identical H1 tags. The HTML output is exactly the same. Sorry, I'll try and keep the code up here so you can see it. If we view the source, it's identical at runtime in the browser. It's the same string of HTML. So lines 24 and 27 are functionally equivalent. You can do either one, whichever you prefer. Now notice on line 24, I use double quotes. And I need to use double quotes in order to inject my variable into my string. If I write the exact same line with single quotes, the 24 and 25 are now identical, except I've used double quotes on 24 and single quotes on 25. So you can see the PHP interpreter does not treat them the same way. If we want to inject a variable into a string, inside of the PHP tags, the whole string needs to be wrapped in double quotes. The double quotes allow this variable to be interpreted. If we use single quotes, it just gets treated as a literal string. So in this case, here, the code would be messier. We would need to append this way, that our variable is outside of the single quotes. Now they're going to be functionally equivalent. So we've got three different ways of displaying this message. That's a combination of static HTML along with some HTML wrapping, the heading, and injecting our PHP variable in the middle. Any one of these will work. Good question. The answer to that would depend on how much HTML are we rendering. If we're going to render just a single line of HTML, like we are in this case, I would probably use the version on line 24. It's the most efficient. We don't have to then open and close the tag, which is messy. We can just inject the variable. However, this could be a big block of HTML with a whole lot of formatting and other content with just one single PHP variable. So in that case, I would probably write it this way. where I had a long block of HTML that was static, and I would just inject a single PHP variable into it. So it depends, what's the volume? Is it mostly PHP code with a little bit of HTML wrapping? If so, I'd use an echo statement inside the tags, and I would include my HTML there. If it was mostly HTML with a little bit of PHP, I would do it this way. So it depends. If we actually look, we can look at a quick example. So we will build a similar page to this. So here's a form. Actually, I can show you what this application looks like. Let me load it in the browser for a minute. We're going to be building something like this application. This is what we built together in class the last time I taught the course. So we'll figure out what we're going to build. We'll build one application, and every week we'll add new features on. It's another reason why you won't come to class, or if you miss it, you make sure you catch up. Because if you come back, your application is going to be missing whatever we did for the 3 hours previous. So here we had a list, it's searchable. And if I log in, if I can only remember my login. Okay, so I want to edit this. Right, so we've got a form, and it's filled out with data from our database. So this is what it looks like in the browser. Here's the code. So there's a bunch of PHP at the top that says, well, which restaurant did the user click on? Query the database and go and fetch that record. So this is all. Here's our SQL. And then I closed the PHP tag. I closed it because I needed to build a form. So this is mostly HTML, right, from line 41. Primarily HTML with my labels and texts. And then because my form gets populated, right, if say I want to edit a restaurant, I don't want to give the user a blank form. I want to show them all the existing values so they could change one or more of them. So to print the existing values into the inputs and also render the image, you can see in the value tag, this is where I'm injecting the individual server-side variables. The name goes in the name, the address, the phone, and then I've got an image tag. If we have a logo, create an image tag and set the source equal to our logo field from the database. So here, because it's the form is mostly HTML, I've closed the PHP tags and I'm just injecting it. In this case, and then down at the bottom, this restaurant doesn't have reviews. Maybe I'll find one where we have some. Let's see. For the section at the bottom, I actually did the opposite. The reviews, most of the code is actually server-side, and I'm just using a little bit of HTML wrapping. So here's the code for the reviews section at the bottom. We've got a query that says go and get the reviews for the selected restaurant and write a heading. So here I've used the echo and I've put the HTML inside. And then inside my loop, I'm creating a div with a bunch of HTML and outputting the user and the review name. So I've actually done it both ways in this one file. Okay. Doesn't have to be done this way. You could close the tag and write your HTML and inject the PHP here. So kind of up to you. So we will be building a site like this. So all of these will work, and it's kind of a question of you'll figure out under the circumstance which makes the most sense for me to use. It's not a one size fits all, that this is always the best way. Okay, here's the last thing we're going to do today. Actually, I'm glad that we had a chance to pull this website up. So this is basically a pretty good idea of what we'll be building. So this is an application where users can create, read, and update, delete restaurants and reviews in a MySQL database. We've added authentication. So as an anonymous user, I can only see information. I cannot add, edit, or delete unless I register and log in. So we'll deal with authentication and security. We'll add file uploads. We'll add some third-party services, like we've got the Weather Network API here that's showing us the current weather in our location. So we're going to build something like this together in class over the lessons. We don't necessarily have to build this exact same thing. We could build some other kind of web application as long as users can create, read, update, delete data, register, log in, and upload files. Other than that, I don't care what it is. So here's my question. So we'll ask task, and then we'll go. Bear with me for just a second. I can't get into it. Okay. We'll do it on D2L. Hang on. I think I may already have a survey up here as well. So in lesson 1, sorry, I'm trying to get to my poll. Which is not working for me. Okay, we'll just create it as a survey on here. That's good. And once again, I already have a survey. So in D2L, I'm open for suggestions. What would you like to build? So last semester, so I'll take maybe 4 or 5 suggestions and then we can vote. So we're going to build an application that does create, read, update, and delete. We can build any kind of web application to do this. So these were the suggestions of my class the last time. This would be under, yeah. Well, I have to fill the options. So first give me the options and then we'll vote. You'll have to vote again. Okay, so we could make a music library. So like our own version of iTunes or something like that. That one's probably, I like the idea, probably doing live chat's probably going to be a bit too advanced for what we're going to do in here. So other suggestions?
I already voted for sandwiches.
Okay, we could do sandwiches. All right, I'm a big fan as well. Okay, we could build a little beer store application. Any other suggestions? All right. Build like a computer database, computer library. All right. Okay, so if you go to surveys, yes, beer is on the list. Okay, so you can go and vote. So go to tools and surveys, and the survey is, what should our in-class web application be about? Okay, so far we only have 13 votes.
Yeah, there was a survey beforehand.
Okay, I could probably reset the entire thing, yes.
Yeah, I voted on the. My vote is for sandwich.
Okay. I will copy the survey and put it back up, and I'll email you and let you know when it's out. Okay. So we'll figure it out for next week. Okay. So we will have a quiz at the start of class next week. It'll be the first, probably 10 minutes should be enough. 5 multiple choice questions, 10 minutes should be enough. Okay. So make sure you're here on time. No assignments this week. Okay. Have a good week. I'll see you next Friday.